What if the sharpest part of your mind is also the part that never lets you rest? There's a kind of person who doesn't just listen to what you say. They listen to how you say it. They catch the half-second pause before your answer. They notice when your smile doesn't quite reach your eyes. They walk into a room, and within moments, they've already mapped who's tense, who's pretending, and where the unspoken conflict lives. People call them intuitive, empathetic, gifted. But what almost nobody talks about is what it actually costs to live inside that mind. Because, for a lot of these people, that sharpness wasn't something they chose. It was something they built, out of necessity, out of survival, and quietly, without anyone noticing, it never stopped building. Today we're going to talk about something psychologists have only recently begun naming clearly: traumatic intelligence. What it actually is, why the people who carry it are often the most capable people in the room, and most importantly, what it genuinely takes to move through it. Not just manage it, but actually overcome it. Because there's a difference. And that difference matters more than most people realize. Let's start at the beginning. The human brain is, above everything else, a prediction machine. Its primary job is not to think beautiful thoughts or solve complex problems. Its primary job is to keep you safe. And the most efficient way it knows how to do that is to learn patterns, to study your environment, identify what signals danger, and respond before danger fully arrives. For most people, this system hums along in the background, mostly quiet, mostly calm. But for someone who grew up in an environment where safety was inconsistent, a household where the emotional temperature could change without warning, where one parent's mood dictated everyone else's behavior, where being caught off guard had real consequences, the brain doesn't get to hum quietly. It stays on, fully on, all the time. And here's what that actually produces: a level of perceptiveness that most people will never develop. You learn to read rooms. You learn to read people. You learn to detect a shift in energy before it becomes a visible change. Neuroscientists studying early stress responses have found that children who grow up in unpredictable environments often develop a remarkably heightened sensitivity in the brain's social processing regions. The neural pathways responsible for reading emotional cues become, quite literally, more active and more refined. This is traumatic intelligence. And it is real. It is measurable. And in many ways, it is genuinely extraordinary. But here's what the brain sciences also tell us. A system that was never designed to run at full capacity, running at full capacity, indefinitely, eventually begins to break down under its own weight. Think about what a day actually feels like when your nervous system has been wired this way. Every conversation isn't just a conversation. It's a reading. Your tracking tone, word choice, body language, what was left unsaid. Every social situation requires a kind of invisible labor that most people around you simply aren't performing. By the time you get home at the end of the day, you haven't just lived through your experiences. You've processed everyone else's too. Dr. Stephen Porges, whose research on the nervous system has fundamentally changed how we understand human stress responses, described how certain early experiences shift the nervous system's baseline. Not just temporarily, structurally. The body learns a setting called chronic low-grade vigilance, a state where you are never fully alarmed, but never fully at ease either. Always scanning, always slightly braced. And here's the quiet tragedy in that. It means even the good moments don't fully land. A peaceful afternoon feels slightly suspicious. A kind gesture gets analyzed before it's accepted. A compliment arrives, and somewhere in the background, a part of your mind is already asking, but what do they want? This isn't pessimism. This isn't a character flaw. This is a nervous system that was taught through lived experience that stillness was never entirely safe. Now here's where most conversations about this topic stop. They describe the wound. They validate the exhaustion. And then they offer something like, be kind to yourself, which, while well-meaning, doesn't actually tell you anything useful. So let's go further. Because overcoming traumatic intelligence isn't about becoming less perceptive. That would be like telling someone who learned to speak 3 languages to forget 2 of them. The intelligence is real. The insight is real. The capacity for empathy it produces is genuinely rare and genuinely valuable. What does need to change is the automation. Right now, for many people carrying this, perception is involuntary. It just happens, constantly, relentlessly, without choice. The work of healing is learning to make it intentional, to shift from a system that runs you to a skill that you use. Researchers studying post-traumatic adaptation, including work built on the foundations laid by psychologists studying resilience in adverse conditions, have consistently found one thing separating people who move forward from those who stay stuck. It isn't the severity of what they experienced. It's whether they develop what's called self-directed regulation, the ability to consciously choose where your attention goes, rather than having your nervous system choose for you. And that shift, as straightforward as it sounds, requires rewiring. So what does that rewiring actually look like in practice? The first and perhaps most counterintuitive step is learning to direct that same perceptiveness inward. Most people with traumatic intelligence are remarkably attuned to the external world and almost entirely disconnected from their own internal experience. They can tell you exactly what someone else is feeling in a room. Ask them what they're feeling in their own body right now, and they often genuinely don't know. This is sometimes called an outward perceptive bias, and it makes sense. When you were young, watching the outside world closely was what kept you safe. Watching yourself wasn't the priority, but healing asks you to flip that attention, at least partially, to begin noticing your own body's signals with the same curiosity you've always applied outward. Where is there tension right now? What does your chest feel like in this conversation? Is your jaw tight? Are your shoulders raised? This practice, sometimes developed through somatic work, sometimes through structured mindfulness, sometimes simply through daily, intentional body check-ins, begins to rebuild the connection between your conscious mind and your nervous system. And over time, that connection gives you choice. When your system starts scanning, you notice it. And noticing it means you can also begin to question it. Is there actually a threat here? Or is this an old pattern running in a new situation? The second piece is equally important, and it's one most people skip. Deliberately practicing safety. This sounds almost too simple to be meaningful. But here's the science behind it. The nervous system learns through repeated experience. It was trained into vigilance through repeated exposure to unpredictability. It untrains through repeated exposure to the opposite, to environments, relationships, and moments where you are genuinely safe, and you allow yourself to fully register that safety rather than dismiss it. That means deliberately staying in calm moments instead of filling them with noise. It means allowing good relationships to be good without immediately preparing for them to go wrong. It means, over time, building a new body of evidence that your nervous system can actually use. Because your brain is still a prediction machine. You just get to start giving it different data. The third piece, and this is where long-term change actually lives, is integration. Not suppression, not management. Integration. What that means is that the experiences which shaped your intelligence stop being something you're running from and become something you carry consciously. You understand why you see the world the way you do. You see the real value in it. And you also see clearly where it overextends itself, where it's protecting you from things that no longer need protecting against. That self-awareness, held without shame, is where perception becomes wisdom rather than burden. Here's what I want to leave you with today. The mind that learned to see everything, that learned to read a room before it even entered, that caught every shift and signal and silence, that mind wasn't malfunctioning. It was adapting, brilliantly, under real conditions. And the goal was never to dismantle that. The goal is to bring it home, to let it rest, to teach it slowly through experience, not through willpower, that the work of survival is done. You don't have to decode every moment anymore. You're allowed to simply be in it. If this video brought something up for you or gave you a new way of looking at something you've been carrying, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep going deeper into how the mind heals, how we grow, and how psychology can actually be useful in real life, subscribe. Because that's exactly what this channel is for. The next video I'd point you toward is right here. I think you'll find it lands in a very similar place. Take care of yourself. I'll see you there.